Hey everyone, Matt here, and today I wanted to talk about a vintage lens that I've been shooting with for the past couple of months and really trying to get to know better before I did something like this. And I feel like I've gotten to a point where I can share some knowledge on this lens and personal experience and maybe help you decide if this is something that you want to add to your vintage lens collection or your lens collection in general, or maybe something you want to pass on and invest that money into something else. So the lens in question today is the Carl Zeiss Jena 20mm f4 vintage lens. This was made in East Germany, and the particular copy I have, the zebra pattern, was made between 1965 and 1975. So it's rather old, very, very old for a lens. This is the first Carl Zeiss lens that I've ever owned, and it's also the first kind of ultra wide prime that I've ever owned. It's definitely been taking some getting used to in terms of just having an ultra wide prime. I tend to lean more towards standard focal lengths, 40 and up, and this definitely has provided me with somewhat of a learning curve, but it's been a good learning curve, and I just want to share with you guys my thoughts and feelings on this lens, so let's get started. The first thing that I want to mention or talk about is the build quality on this lens. Now, a lot of vintage lenses are well known for being all metal, really strong, kind of bulletproof lenses. And this lens, I think, takes that to a completely next level type of thing. This is a solid, dense piece of metal and glass, and it's incredible. When I first got it out of the box, one, I was surprised with kind of the interesting shape that it is, how small it is for how wide it is, and how dense it is for how small it was. The focus ring is big and chunky, but not in the sense of chunky like it's bulky. It's perfectly milled and refined to fit your hand nicely. The focus throw is really accurate, really smooth. There's no grinding, there's no lag, there's no, wobble in the focus ring. Everything is super, super tight. And that also goes with the aperture ring. The aperture clicks are super accurate, really just snap right into place. The aperture ring, or the aperture diaphragm, the blades themselves, follow in beautifully, and everything just works. I don't know, it's like a perfectly made grandfather clock. It's just absolutely beautifully put together. And I know the Carl Zeiss Jena lenses do have this weird kind of ambiance around them of the fact that they're East German, they're not as well built as the West German lenses, or that there's a sacrifice in quality because they weren't made by the West Germans. But I have to say, this lens is incredibly, incredibly well built. And I think personally, it holds up to that Carl Zeiss name, which is very well known for building some fantastically strong and resolute lenses back in the day, and even some of the newer ones now. So with build quality out of the way, we'll get to the thing that everybody wants to talk about, and that is image quality. Image quality on this lens has been something, it's been the main reason of why I've been trying to decide, do I want to keep this lens? Do I want to sell this lens? What do I want to do with it? Because it's neither bad nor is it great. It's kind of somewhere in between. And there's moments where it really does shine and leans more towards that great. But there's other moments where it's just, I don't know. It's just not as good as I was hoping it would be. So, is it sharp? No. Kind of. But does it retain detail? Yes, it does retain a really good amount of detail. So if you're pulling up shadows, dropping highlights, changing things around, or just wanting to make sure that, the entire frame has detail in it, yes, it retains detail beautifully. It does a fantastic job at that. Sharpness though, I will say, if you stop down, like most vintage lenses, it will get sharper, but it won't change the fact that for the most part, it's really only going to be the center portion of the lens that is very, very sharp. Once you get outside of that center portion, things start to soften very, very, very quickly. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it was just the overall design of the lens, but everything seems to kind of just fall off once you get closer and closer to the edges and farther away from that center point. I've noticed this most in my videography. In photography, I have a little bit more control, just a smidge bit more control, but in my videography, it definitely shows a lot more than it does in the photography. But one thing that does show in both is the heavy vignetting that this lens does have. Even if you're stopped down to f8, f11, there is some heavy vignetting going on. At f4, it's definitely noticeable. Most of the time I shoot this lens at f5.6, I normally get the most amount of sharpness for the most amount of light that I can get into the lens. If you go any more open than that, things start to get a little bit dicey. I'm not saying that it's not producing good looking images. It definitely is. It's producing some very nice, some very beautiful images, but I just feel like it's missing that little bit of something sometimes, and other times I feel like, wow, this lens just gave me a look that I've never seen before and never thought I would see before, and it looks so, for the cliche of the word, cinematic. It looks really, really good. The color rendition on this lens is beautiful. It does a fantastic job. Everything looks great coming out of it. And again, the cliche word, it looks cinematic. It does look really, really nice. Comparing the color out of my Takumars to this, it's totally different. They're both great, but it's totally different. I just feel like there's some extra something about the Zeiss. I don't know what it is. And that's the thing that keeps me, again, it's one of those things where it's like, it's great at this, but not great at that. It's beautiful when it looks like this, but sometimes I'm missing what I need out of this area of things. So yeah, I would say that overall, and back to my previous thought, I would say that overall, this lens definitely needs some time to be worked with. You need to find the sweet spot on it. You need to find kind of what situations it works best in and best for. I still feel like it's a lens that I want to keep because I want to explore it more. I don't want to just give up on it and then a few years down the road be like, man, I wish I had kept that lens because it was actually a really, really good lens. Now I have to rebuy it because that's never a fun thing to do. So overall conclusion, overall thoughts on this lens. I think it's a beautiful lens. I think it's made, fantastically. I think the color rendition is amazing, but I don't think that it's gonna be my go-to lens for the time being. I still think that's gonna be my SMC Takumar 28 3.5. I'm much more comfortable with that lens. It gives me images that I know that I am gonna wanna get right off the bat. With the Zeiss, I really want to take my time with it, so I'm making sure that I'm using it in the proper scenarios at the proper time, because I don't want to cheat the lens of what it's capable of and show it in a bad light for excuse the pun there, but show it in a bad light and not give it its due. So if you are planning on buying this lens, first of all, you need to make sure that you want to spend the money. I got this one for a little over $200, which as far as vintage lenses go, is really expensive. But you also need to make sure that you have the time and the patience to actually, take time to test the lens, learn what it's good at, learn what it's bad at, angles and things that you can shoot at it with, what times of day it's best for, and just really getting to know it. It's definitely a project lens in the sense that it's gonna take some time to just get used to it and learn its quirks. But I feel like with some strong investment into it, it will definitely pay off in the end. So hopefully, within all my ramblings and scattered thoughts, you found some useful information out of this and you're able to come to a conclusion if this is the lens for you. For me, for the time being, yes, this is the lens for me. I'm quickly finding things that it's good at, things that it's bad at, kind of jotting those down and formulating a great use for this lens, and I would imagine that within the months to come, I'll have something nailed down, and maybe I'll come out with an update video, kind of revealing what I have found to be the best use for this lens. So again, I appreciate all of you watching. If you are new here, welcome. Thank you so much. If you've been here for a while, thank you for continuing on with your support. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I will see you all in the next one. Bye.